Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. And thank you to everyone who has joined me here today up on this podium. If you'll bear with me, there are a lot of folks on this podium, a lot of folks who are hard at work at addressing issues of violence and gun violence in our communities and across this state. And I want to take a moment to recognize each of them. District Attorney Dan Connolly, District Attorney Marion Ryan, District Attorney David Sullivan, Chief Bill Brooks, who is president of the Mass Chiefs of Police Association, Boston Police Commissioner Bill Evans, Reverend Jeffrey Brown, Pastor Gerald, both of whom are from 12th Baptist Church, Reverend Dan Smith of GBIO, Poe Murray, chairwoman of the Newtown Action Alliance, Greg Gibson from Gloucester, whose son was killed by an assault weapon, Josh Sugarman, executive director of the Violence Policy Center, Liam Lowney, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Office of Victim Assistance, whose sister Shannon was killed by an assault weapon. Jack McDevitt, Associate Dean and Director of the Institute on Race and Justice at Northeastern University. We also are delighted to be joined by representatives from Mothers for Justice and Equality, Zoe Grover, Executive Director of the Stop Handgun Violence, and a special thank you, I must say, to the members of the Attorney General's office, a terrific collection across bureaus in this office who, in the days both before Orlando and since, have worked hard to get us here to this point today. A steady stream of violence has plagued our nation over the past month. We see the pain and the grief of a nation torn by violence. The single largest mass shooting in our country's history, targeting the LGBT and Latino community. Black men across this country, husbands, sons, fathers, killed by law enforcement. 8 brave police officers murdered. Those events are tragic. Every day, you should know, 90 people in this country die at the hand of a gun. Another 200 more are injured. There were more mass shootings last year than actual calendar days. I believe that we need to have both the empathy and the courage to acknowledge, to understand the fear, mistrust, and despair that so many Americans are experiencing. There are young men in Black and brown communities that live their lives fearful of interactions with the police in this country. There are police officers in this country who not only don't feel supported by the communities they serve, but also feel that they have a target on their backs. And there are many who unfortunately want to manipulate these fears to amplify problems rather than work to bring forth constructive solutions. But I'm interested in moving forward with empathy so that we see one another as human beings, not through the lens of a stereotype, and with action. We cannot let our differences define our humanity. Instead, we need a collective effort from all corners to end gun violence and to keep human beings from killing one another. That's why we're all gathered here today, because we know we can overcome these challenges by working together, engaging in honest conversations, investing in our communities, and supporting our police officers. We can stop this kind of violence in this country. Much of that work has already begun. In Massachusetts, law enforcement is receiving unconscious bias training and education. We've hosted church security trainings for clergy. We've undertaken efforts to reform our criminal justice system and to enhance policies on use of force and de-escalation for police departments across this state. Police officers and community leaders are working so hard, walking side by side through neighborhoods across our state. And we're teaching the next generation a different way, the possibility of a different way. Look, there is so much more work to do, but I am committed to doing everything we can to keep our streets safe and relationships between law enforcement and the communities they serve as productive and peaceful as possible. While we work hard to address the root causes of much of this violence, we're taking immediate action today to limit the ability of dangerous people to kill. Today, we've put gun manufacturers and gun dealers in Massachusetts on notice that we're cracking down on the sale of illegal assault weapons. Increasingly, as we have seen, Assault weapons are the weapons of choice for mass shooters. They were the kinds of weapons used in Orlando, San Bernardino, Aurora, Colorado, and Newtown. The kind of weapon used this past weekend to brutally target and kill 3 Baton Rouge police officers. In the wake of Orlando, where the killer took the lives of 49 innocent people with an AR-15 style assault weapon, we took a look at our own state assault weapons ban and at gun sales here in the state. Based on that review, we are taking this action today. Massachusetts law prohibits the sale and possession of assault weapons, such as the Colt AR-15 and the AK-47. It also expressly prohibits copies and duplicates of those weapons. These deadly assault weapons were originally designed for military use. They are meant to kill people in a very short amount of time, as many people as possible. They do not belong in civilian hands. Unfortunately, in the week after Orlando, we saw the sales of some of these very assault weapons jump as high as 450% here in Massachusetts in just the week after Orlando. Despite the laws on our books that ban these weapons, over 10,000 of them were sold in Massachusetts last year alone. You might ask, just how is this possible? Well, for far too long, the gun industry has taken it upon itself to interpret our assault weapons ban. Gun manufacturers have made and marketed copycat weapons that they've deemed, quote, state compliant. They sell guns without certain features, for example, without a flash suppressor or a folding stock, small tweaks that do nothing to limit the deadliness of the weapon. To my right here and to your left, you see a couple of posters. To my far right, you see a poster that explains the parts of an assault weapon. And when I mean that gun manufacturers have taken it upon themselves to interpret the law as they see fit and to make tweaks in an effort to evade application of our state assault weapons ban, what I'm talking about, for example, is the flash suppressor. If you look at the end of that gun, you see what's marked the flash suppressor. And what gun manufacturers have done is actually removed the flash suppressor from some of their models and then marketed the gun in Massachusetts as Massachusetts compliant. Doing so does nothing to address the lethality of the weapon. It elevates form over function, and it is not what was intended by the important piece of legislation, our state assault weapons ban. These gun manufacturers have marketed these weapons as the legal version of a prohibited gun, but I want to be clear, these weapons are illegal. They are copies or duplicates of banned weapons, and they cannot be bought or sold here in Massachusetts. Today, my office sent an enforcement notice to the more than 350 gun dealers in Massachusetts to offer them direction on this issue, to make clear to them that we now are determining that these copies and duplicates are copies and duplicates banned by our state assault weapons ban. I want to be perfectly clear. If a gun's operating system is essentially the same as a banned weapon, or if the gun has component parts that are interchangeable with those of a banned weapon, it's a copy, it's a duplicate, and it's illegal. Assault weapons prohibited under our laws cannot be altered in any way to make the sale or possession legal in Massachusetts. My office's actions today will give us the full protection of the state assault weapons ban to do what it was intended to do, and not leave it to the gun manufacturer's self-appointed interpretation. The gun industry doesn't get to decide what's compliant. We do. Our action today is effective immediately. We recognize that many residents have purchased these guns in the past believing that they were doing so legally. So this directive will not apply to guns bought or sold prior to today. Gun dealers who currently have these weapons on hand are not permitted, however, to sell them to Massachusetts buyers. They may transfer them out of state to jurisdictions where sales of these weapons are still legal. We ask, as we always do, for the continued cooperation of gun dealers in this state to work with us, to comply with the law, and to continue to be part of an effort to stop the kinds of mass shootings we've witnessed across this country. Gun violence is a problem that ultimately demands a federal solution, we know, and we're clear-eyed about the magnitude of the problem. There are over 350 million guns out there on the streets across this country. Many of them are illegally possessed. There's an enormous amount of work to do. We know that. But in the face of inaction by Congress, we have an obligation to do all that we can here in Massachusetts to keep our residents safe, to keep law enforcement safe, to keep our communities safe. That's what today is about. It is a step. It is not a total panacea. I recognize that, but it is a step. And it is action, and it is action in the direction that I believe we need to go. Today, that means stopping the sale of these deadliest guns and giving the people of Massachusetts the full protection of existing gun laws. With this coalition around me, with community leaders, law enforcement, government officials, and residents across this state, we will continue to work towards a safer and more peaceful future. We owe it to everyone who has lost their lives to senseless gun violence in this country, to their families, to their children, and to ourselves. Thank you all for being here. At this time, I'd like to invite to the podium Suffolk County District Attorney Dan Connolly.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Healy. Study after study has shown that gun laws work. And here in Massachusetts, where firearm fatalities are among the lowest in the nation, our gun laws save lives. Those laws prohibit a class of weapons that were once reserved for military use, and for good reason. They facilitate the taking of innocent lives on an unconscionable scale, as the number and frequency of mass shootings proves over and over again. We in Boston know that even one homicide is one too many. But cities like ours, which annually see mid-double-digit homicide rates, most often committed with illegal handguns, could easily see triple-digit homicide rates if high-capacity assault weapons are allowed to continue to proliferate unchecked. Massachusetts gun laws are strong, sensible, and effective, but they're undercut by the lax regulations across so much of the country. Of more than 1,700 Massachusetts crime guns recovered last year, fewer than a quarter of those guns were traced to a retail sale here in Massachusetts. The remainder made their way to our streets and our neighborhoods from states as close as New Hampshire and Maine and as far away as Arizona. Why? Because the federal lawmakers who could standardize sensible gun laws are missing in action. They'd rather tweet their thoughts and prayers for the dead than take action to protect the living. Thoughts and prayers in the aftermath of a tragedy are not enough. We don't need to see the nation's flags lowered again and again and again because some madman had access to weapons of war. We need action. But if Congress will not act, then we in Massachusetts will. On behalf of the state's district attorneys and all of the citizens that we serve across Massachusetts, I applaud Attorney General Maura Healey for what she's doing. And she can count on us and for my support going forward. To people who say that we don't need any more gun laws, we only need to enforce those on the books, that's exactly what Attorney General Healey is announcing here today. And it's the right thing to do, and it's the right time to do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you to you and your fellow prosecutors for all that you do day in and day out on behalf of so many victims, families, and communities across this state. You certainly see up close the very real effect, the pernicious effect of so many illegal guns out there in the hands of people who shouldn't have access to them, and I appreciate your support in being here today. At this time, I invite Chief Bill Brooks, who is President of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Association.
Thank you, Attorney General Healey. I just have a few brief remarks. I think it's important to understand that today's enforcement notice from the Attorney General is not new law, and the previous speakers have mentioned that, nor is it a set of new regulations. The Commonwealth's assault weapon statute has been in place for many years. To her credit, the Attorney General could have just begun conducting inspections, but instead she's letting everyone know what is expected of them, particularly gun shops, before those inspections or any enforcement action take effect. Massachusetts, as District Attorney Connolly has mentioned, Massachusetts has a reputation for strong gun laws. I think one reason for those strong gun laws is that police chiefs play an important role. Unlike in so many states, licenses to carry can be denied if a chief, using his discretion and judgment, deems the person to be unsuitable. But another reason for our strong gun laws, I think, is that we rely heavily on retail sales, and we rely heavily on reputable gun shop owners. The vast majority of gun shop owners that I have interacted with over the years scrupulously abide by state and federal law. They're trustworthy business people, and I think today's action by the Attorney General will make it clear what's expected of them. A few months ago, I went to buy, if it's of any interest to anybody, I went to buy an off-duty firearm, and I went to a gun shop where I know the owner, and we were having a pleasant conversation, and he was going through the paperwork, and he picked up the phone, and he was doing the national NICS check. Now, I know this gun store owner very, very well, and he was on the phone, and he kind of covered it and said there's a slight delay. And when he was all done, he hung up the phone. He says there's going to be a delay. It's going to be another day or two before this is complete. And he picked up the gun and the box and all the paperwork, and he went into the back room. Now, he knows me. He knows who I am, but that's exactly what I would expect. And he knows that that's what I would expect. And that's exactly what's supposed to happen, that these guys abide by the letter of the law. And that's really what we need, and that's, I think, what we rely so heavily on. So that's the intent of today's enforcement action. I'm glad to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. And folks should know that under Chief Brooks's leadership, just this year, there was an announcement by the Chiefs of Police Association. They were instituting a new program, including mandatory training in unconscious bias for police across this state, in addition to any number of innovative approaches. And so I continue to credit Chief Brooks and his colleagues for the work that they are doing across this state on this front, and to all members of law enforcement who get up day in and day out in increasingly challenging and difficult times. We thank you for your service and the work that you do. At this time, I'd like to call Greg Gibson to the podium.
Excuse me.
My name is Greg Gibson. In 1992, my son Galen was killed in a school shooting, the random victim of a disturbed student who purchased his semi-automatic rifle at a local gun store and then ordered oversized magazines through the mail. This is equipment that no hunter would need, or most would not condone, and yet purchase of this equipment is still possible in most states even today. I'm a military veteran and a licensed gun owner, and although I'm proud to have helped preserve our freedoms for 4 years, I wholeheartedly support this initiative and every other initiative that we can come forward with that will save other families from having to endure what my family suffered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg, for your willingness to share your experience. It's important that people continue to hear these experiences and these stories and to understand why it is that we must do everything we can to act, not just talk, but to act to address gun violence in this country. At this time, I invite Pastor Gerald from 12th Baptist Church to come forward. Pastor Gerald.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Moore Healy. I come today and I stand not only in agreement, but in support of this initiative. We have had to bury too many young people whose lives have been lost because of senseless shootings and senseless violence. My prayer is that this initiative will help to stem the tide and bring a new dynamic throughout the Commonwealth. I thank Attorney General Hill for taking the initiative and the leadership in this manner. And we will pray as we engage, and prayerfully we'll have a better community where all people can live not only in freedom, but also in safety. I applaud the police officials for their good work and our cooperation with them as we try to maintain law and order in society today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Gerald, and thank you for all the work that you do leading the peace walks through Roxbury with other members of law enforcement and the mayor's office and Boston Police. It's terrific and terrifically important. Thank you for that. At this time, I invite Josh Sugarman, who is head of the Violence Policy Center, to come forward and speak.
Since our founding in 1988, the Violence Policy Center has worked to stop the sale of military-bred semi-automatic assault weapons. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here today in strong support of the Attorney General's action and to applaud the leadership that Massachusetts has once again shown in working to reduce gun violence. Assault weapons are military-bred, anti-personnel weapons designed to kill as many people as possible in as short a time as available. And as many have already mentioned, the past 5 weeks we've seen the effect from Orlando to Dallas, most recently Baton Rouge. We've seen the horrific damage that these weapons of war can inflict when they are used for the exact purpose for which they were designed. In 2014, the most recent year for which information is available, our research shows that 1 out of 5 law enforcement officers slain in the line of duty was killed with an assault weapon. And yet the gun industry constantly works to find ways around the few assault weapons laws that are on the books on the state level, making actions like those announced today critical to protect public safety. Once again, I too thank the AG's office for the invitation to be here, and once again, we applaud the actions taken today. They'll make Massachusetts a safer place and continue to be a leader in gun violence prevention.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you to the Center for all the important work you do on the policy front. At this time, I'm inviting to the podium Poe Murray. Poe is from Connecticut and heads the Newtown Action Alliance. Many of us thought that after Sandy Hook, there would be change in this country. Unfortunately, we have continued to see one mass shooting after another, but we are so pleased to have Poe with us here today to talk to us this morning.
Thank you, Attorney General Healy. Today is the 4-year anniversary of the Aurora shooting, where a deranged gunman entered that movie theater and killed 12 people and 70 other individuals. So our hearts go out to the Aurora community and the friends that we work with on a daily basis to end gun violence. As a resident of Sandy Hook and a neighbor of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooter, I know firsthand how one gunman with one semi-automatic military-style assault weapon can devastate 26 families, 27,000 community members, and 300 million Americans. The human cost of allowing civilians to acquire weapons of war is far too high, and millions of dollars have been spent on physical, structural, and emotional recovery of our community. It is not surprising that the profit-driven gun makers are attempting to circumvent the assault weapons ban by manufacturing copies and duplicates of banned weapons. As the number of households with guns dwindles, the gun industry thrives on the sale of these weapons of war. As a concerned neighbor of Massachusetts, we applaud Attorney General Maura Healey for taking bold action to enforce the Massachusetts ban on assault weapons, to protect all citizens here in this state and neighboring states. We do not live in a war zone. Sandy Hook is not a war zone. Boston is not a war zone. Any weapons that could brutally murder 20 children and 6 educators in less than 5 minutes in an elementary school or 9 people at Umpqua Community College, or 14 people at a holiday party in San Bernardino, or 49 people in a gay nightclub in Orlando, or 5 Dallas police officers, or 3 Baton Rouge police officers, does not belong in the hands of civilians. Assault weapons of any form have one purpose only: to hunt human beings. Massachusetts was wise to ban assault weapons years ago. Connecticut learned the hard way after Sandy Hook. Too many Americans are still vulnerable of being gunned down anywhere and everywhere with weapons of war. Since a handful of states' ban on assault weapons are not enough, the Newtown Action Alliance is proud to be a member of the Campaign Against Assault Weapons, a broad coalition of nearly 100 organizations working to pass federal assault weapons ban. We are pushing for co-sponsors for Representative David Cicilline's bill 4269 to build a strong foundation in preparation for the next Congress and the next president who will say no to weapons of war. As more and more states and Congress consider a ban on assault weapons, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, and other states with a ban on assault weapons can lead on the enforcement of the law to ensure that our laws will be as effective to prevent additional horrific shootings where assault weapons are the weapons of choice. We encourage all organizations, attorney general's offices, police enforcement groups to join our efforts to say no to weapons of war. Thank you.
Thanks, Poe, and thank you for your continued advocacy on behalf of so many, and thank you for acknowledging today's sad anniversary of the Aurora shooting. At this time, I'd be happy to take questions.